going slightly mad. I'm going slightly mad.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Aloysius. How are you? You've got more. You've got a question for me. Okay, but first we'll do the thingies that they ask us to do, because we don't want to make people upset. Did you hear about how Ortheil sent Her Infernal Majesty something and said it was from everybody, and it's not from everybody? She's really angry at me now. Anyway, here we have our templates, and if you sign up for the newsletter, you get a free digital one. Yes, go over to the website and you can sign it up. And we also have the book to help you with your writings. So both of those available on the Black Cockie Press website. And you really, really should sign up for this Friday's newsletter. Yeah, really, I promise you it is worth it. Do it tonight. Okay, so, Aloysius, you have a problem. It's not me that has a problem. Oh, okay, good. Well, not really, yes. You remember my friend Bert? Your friend Bert, the one who talks a lot about what he's going to write, but doesn't actually end up writing anything. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, yes, your friend Bert. Yes, I know your friend Bert. Anyway, my friend Bert, yes, finally wrote something. Oh, good. Is it any good? No. Oh. He asked me to read it. Yes. And he keeps talking about all the world building that he's done and the 10 years he spent building this world. Yeah. And it's not in the book. Oh. So he spent 10 years doing world building, and he's really proud of all this world building. But when you read the book, it doesn't sound like there's any structure to it. No. Is it like reading a in a white box? Yes. Is it like you get the description at the very beginning of the paragraph, or the chapter even, and then progressively as you read, the characters lose their bodies, the room loses its solidity, and pretty soon by the end of it, all you're listening to are disembodied voices in a white void? Yes, that's exactly it. How did you know? How did I know is because this happens to every single writer. Absolutely every single writer. How do we fix it? Well, I was watching some other videos on YouTube, and they were talking about the same thing, and their solution was put in description, which I guess you have suggested to Bert. Yes, I suggest. And what did Bert say? Bert said when he reads it, he can see it all in his head. Yeah. That's why telling people just put in description will not work. It just won't work. And when people do attempt to put in description, what they will do is they will chuck in a whole lot of adjectives and adverbs. And you remember what I say about adjectives and adverbs? Burn them with fire. Burn them with fire. Yes, we burn them with fire because are they useful? No, they're not. They just make it sound like telling. Yes, see, you know all this, Aloysius. Yeah. So that was the advice that I've seen on other channels, and it doesn't work, and it doesn't work for a very particular reason. What's that reason? It's an experience thing. It actually has nothing to do with how good or bad you are as a writer. It has to do with how experienced you are as a writer. Huh? Yeah. And there are a lot of people who do not like to hear this, because most people will start writing thinking, I know how to read and write, so therefore I must be able to write. I went through high school. I got good marks in English. My English teacher said I was really promising. I haven't done it for 20 years, but how hard could it possibly be? Yeah, I've met a lot of people like that. Yeah, I've met a lot of people like that too. And so you sit down to write, and you're writing away. You've got an idea. You've got a great idea. He has a good idea. Yes, he does have a good idea. He has a great idea. He's read a whole load of creative writing books. He's possibly done some creative writing courses. Now, I'm not going to tell you that they're not good. They are. We've got a book. If I didn't think it worked, I wouldn't advise you to buy a book or buy templates or any of that. That works. Yes. However, that's just another word for but, isn't it? Yeah. But's coming in here. We don't like buts. No, that's why I used however. However, writing is a practice that, even if you are talented at it, and I'm not saying Bert is not talented. I have met untalented writers and they don't progress. They get frustrated and bored because turns out writing is a lot harder than you think, and they'll move on to some other place. People assume writing is easy, and so it becomes quite it can become quite difficult if someone has assumed it's easy and then they encounter this problem, and then you tell them, yes, you tell them that what they've done isn't working, even though they've spent a long time. They might have spent months and months and months. Has Bert spent months and months and months? Yes, Bert has spent months and months working on this. And because he has spent months and months and months, he's assuming that there must be some progress there because he's got tens of thousands of words. Yes, and he's worked really diligently at it, hasn't he? Yes. And how many drafts has he done? 1. Yeah. That's generally a big flag, which is why we don't do readers' reports on first drafts, isn't it? Yes. We don't do readers' reports on first drafts because of that, because it you're not meant to give them to somebody. A first draft, no matter how long it is still a first draft. But a lot of beginning writers do not see that. So what they will do is you get this first draft and it will have white box problem. Yes. Now, think back, Aloysius, to when you were a little writing bat. And anyone who's been writing for a good deal of time, this will be familiar. Think back to when you started writing, especially novels or short stories. What most people did was the book was like a movie in their head. and they're watching the movie, and a lot of people will say this. They will say, oh, it moves so fast and I can barely keep up writing out the movie in my head. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that too. It's perfectly normal. That is how you start writing. That is not where you finish writing. Now, have you heard the 10,000 hours? The idea that 10,000 hours worth of practice of anything is what is needed to become particularly proficient in it, even expert. Yes, 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours is a lot of time. You need to put that sort of practice into something to get good, really good. Not just passable, but really, really good. Okay, so I happen to have a ukulele. I can barely play the ukulele. I am truly drivel at the ukulele because I don't put enough hours into practice, so my fingers don't have the muscle memory in there to remember what chord it is, so I have to keep looking at the book and the neck of the ukulele and try and strum, and it's just a complete and utter nightmare. There are 5-year-olds who play better than I do. Okay, and I know that is entirely because I haven't put in enough hours to play it. I would like to, but it isn't my priority, and so I don't put the hours in. Now, Bert is putting in the hours, is he not? Yes. But he is still at the watch a movie of his book in his head stage. Yes. That's not a skill problem. That isn't a talent problem. That is an experience problem. What Bert will find is if he continues to put in the hours, yes, more hours than he's already done. Yes. And the fact that he's put in so many hours and written such a big book already, even though it's only a first draft, but it's having problems, is a great thing because you only get into it if you put the hours in. So does Bert get into flow? Yes. So he's already managed to master flow. That is a really good thing because if you can tap into that, you already are in a good position to just put the hours in. I don't have the time to put the hours into the ukulele. If I ever get good at it, if I ever am able to play anything, I will play you something, but I very much doubt it. So, there we go. But what happens is as you put the hours in, something funny happens in your brain. Yes, you start rewiring your brain. Now, we are highly visual creatures, which is why when you start writing, you start playing a movie in your head and you start pretty much narrating the movie. Okay? But as you put in the hours, what you will find, you found this, I found this, people out there who are writers will know this, is that you start thinking in words. Words, yes, words, which is really, really unnatural. We don't think in words. Words is not something that we are naturally going to think in. There are, in fact, some people who do not think in words at all. They have no internal narrative. What must that be like? I know. What must that be like? Apparently they exist. They didn't know other people thought in words, where you have that internal narrative going on. But that's a completely different thing. As a writer, you are training your brain to use different parts to when you sit down to write. So in one of the big universities in America, I will find the article about this. I use this story all the time when I'm talking to people about writing and how they can progress. There was a big American study where they took 2 sets of writers. Now, one set of writers were people like Bert, people with no training whatsoever who wrote for the enjoyment but were what we would call amateurs. Okay? They didn't have training. They were just writing for what they wanted to do. We use the word amateur, and it seems a little bit like that sounds like a bad thing, but it just means that you're not a trained person. You're not trained in anything, in the thing that you're doing. That amateur does not mean that you are going to have to be bad. But these people were not trained. They hadn't put in those sorts of hours that somebody who is trained in something have put in. So they got them. Then they also got a group of third-year writing students. So students who had spent 3 years at university studying writing constantly. So people who have, in other words, put in 10,000 hours. So they had training, and they had the 10,000 hours. What they did was then they put both of these sets of people into an MRI machine and asked them to come up with the basics of a story, start plotting out a story. Yes. Okay, and what they found was completely different brain regions lit up to the two different groups. Yes. In the amateur group, the visual part of their brain lit up massively, and the language part of their brain very little. Yes, and what this looks like when you are on the page is the white room. Because all they are doing is putting in triggers for themselves to kick off the movie in their head. What they don't know is that those triggers, because the movie is so vivid in their head, don't work for another person. So when you went to read Bert's book, Aloysius, it didn't translate. Now, when they put the third-year writing students into the MRI machine, yes, what they found was the opposite. The visual parts of their brain didn't light up terribly much, but the language parts of their brain, there was the activity. Because what they were doing was thinking in words and then seeing, do these words provoke visuals? Not creating visuals that they then translate into words. So when you are having a problem with white box, it is not a skill problem, it is an experience problem. Your brain has not yet created the connections to think primarily in words. It's thinking still in images and then trying to translate those images into words. What a more experienced writer does, and the only way to do this is through experience. You're creating new connections in your brain, you're training different parts of your brain to fire up that don't do it naturally. They don't automatically fire up in this way. So you have to train them, which is why it takes so long. These people are thinking in words and then using the visual parts of their mind to make sure, do these words provoke the images that I want, which is where vivid writing comes from. So don't give up. Keep going. 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours is not a guarantee that you will be great, but it does take that long to retrain your brain, and you will not know where you are as a writer until you get that training in. Okay? Which is why, you start when you're young. But if you haven't started when you're young, don't worry. Keep going. It will get there. You can train it. I think the Miles Franklin was won by a woman in her 60s last year. So, there is always time. There is always time. You have not missed out on your time. But it does take time. There isn't, unfortunately, a shortcut for this. You can do as many courses, read as many books, but ultimately, because it is a rewiring job, it just takes that sort of time. Our brains are plastic and do remarkable things throughout our entire life. This is why it's a learnable thing. But it does take time to put in those new connections, to do that new wiring, which is why I'm not going to tell you to start using more adjectives and adverbs or put in more description as if that's so easy. I am going to tell you, keep writing. Remember how you could get 26 stories in a year? That's a good way to get your 10,000 hours up. It doesn't matter if you throw them all out. It really, really doesn't matter if you throw them all out. That's the other thing. You will never get your 10,000 hours up. You will never get your time to rewire if every single thing you write is completely precious. Yes. But yes, I know, Bert is very attached to this, in which case he's either going to have to do one of two things. Put it aside until he has the skill to work on it appropriately so that he doesn't have to keep overworking it, which is probably a good thing because much like dough, stories get stale or overworked and tough and then you lose interest in them. He can put it aside and work on some other things. Or if he's willing to risk it, he can keep working on it. Though I would put it as, if it's really that special to him that he has put that much work into it, I would put that big work aside, work on smaller things, because there is nothing worse than having something that you were really attached to just get stale and overworked and you have to throw it out. And it's really hard to throw something out when you are that attached to it. So I would not use that dream project as my learning thing. I would definitely work on something else. Keep working on something else until suddenly, and it really does feel like, oh, I'm thinking in words. That's weird. It really does. You will find it just happen. It's like, oh, sentences are coming into my head. I'm going for my walk to come up with what I'm going to do with my book, and whole sentences are coming into my head, paragraphs, and now I have to go home and write these down. That's when you can then pick up your dream project. So, unfortunately, there is no shortcut for Bert. You'll have to tell him that, and you will have to have that conversation that, unfortunately, what he thinks is in the book is not in the book. As that's going to be uncomfortable, Aloysius. Yeah. I don't want to be there when you do that. I just don't. I don't. So anyway, is that everything? Yep. Okay. So, bye-bye, everybody. De Wolkenfinger, ich bin ja Jesus, Bye-bye. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.